Hi, everyone. Welcome to the OFM podcast, where metabolic health and performance matter. I'm your host, Peter Defty, the general manager of Vespa and the original developer of this whole program called OFM. I want to invite one of our great collaborators because, like I said, I'm the original guy who came up with this stuff in terms of developing the foundational fitness you need to not only perform better, but to be better now and for the long term. But this has been a collaboration with a bunch of fantastic people. And today we have one of them on there, Dustin Armstrong. Dustin, welcome to the podcast. And I'm excited to share your story with our audience.
Yeah, Peter, hey, first, thanks for having me on here. And we can go into this for a long time. I mean, I'm thankful for our paths crossing. Your brother introducing to me was a godsend.
Well, that's a good place to start. Let's start back with where you were, just what you were doing previous to our being introduced, and then that journey.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a real short story of my life. Athlete my whole life. Stress, all kinds of things thrown at me. Originally, I was born with no lungs.
With what?
Underdeveloped lungs.
Okay.
And I worked on an incubator for the first year of my life as they developed. So I wasn't supposed to be an athlete. Chased this dream my whole entire life. Never been really that healthy. Struggled here and there. Did pro BMX and then crossed over to road bike racing and fell in love.
How are you when you crossed over to road bike racing?
28, 29. Yeah, so it was in 2012. Just had enough of getting banged up from BMX racing and fell in love with this road bike thing and penned it. And I was already a health coach and working in a gym, training athletes, just doing it by the book, the traditional way. And
this was in Southern California.
Southern California. And so I went from a Cat 5 to a Cat 1 in 1 year and went all in, committed. At that time, I was a raw vegan, transitioned into a paleo for athletes, and really was only using a lot of fruits. Really, I've always been holistic, organic, using lots of fruits for my fuel. And then in 2015, my functional medicine team's like, hey, I actually originally went to them because I had so much inflammation. My neck was hurting, my wrists were hurting, my elbows were hurting. I couldn't even ride anymore. And they found out that I was a borderline, pre-diabetic at 5.8, 5.9 number. I was using the ketogenic diet already for severe metabolically ill, like morbidly obese clients. Following all the podcasts, Ben Greenfield, I was following your work with the FASTER study, back then. Was super intrigued on it, just scared to even give it a go because like I mentioned to you before, I did some studies at Cal Lutheran College on fast twitch fibers and different things. I'm 78% type 2 fibers. And
but you got aerobic fast twitch fibers.
Yeah, now.
yeah, now.
Coming from BMX, I was predominantly 30 seconds at tops. And wow. I was scared to try the keto thing, even though I was using it with clients. I was scared to try it in sport. But when I got that diagnosis with diabetes, I was cursing out my sport because I knew what I was doing. I was stopping at the Starbucks, eating as much calorie-dense carbs as I could every hour. And so I was all right, it's no longer about sport. This is about my health. I jumped on the keto thing, went all in 2015, and got my A1C down to pretty much a 5.0, pretty easy, but lost all my top end. Really kind of stepped away from racing for a little bit, and then that's when I was sponsored by Serious Cycling, and your brother was very involved down there. And your brother noticed through my social media and people I was talking to about keto, he's like, you got to meet my brother. And that's when you introduced me to the OFM strategy. Put that into play. It was game-changing. Threshold went up. Power came back. Recovery through the roof. Numbers stayed low.
Your A1C numbers.
Yeah, they stayed low, and we've talked off and on for years on. And in the summit, you're one of the guys in there was talking about those post fasted ride numbers. I logged all that stuff for years. I was so into it. Now I don't log. I just like to live my life. But I was seeing the same stuff. I was going out for 4-hour fasted rides early in the morning and coming back and seeing these diabetic numbers that were scaring the crap out of me. But I also dealt for, a pretty long time. I dealt with that, was it the pre-dawn phenomenon?
Yep.
Well, I was waking up every morning at 170. So before the OFM, I implemented that, using the glucometer to tell me when to break my fast. So I wouldn't break my fast until I saw 85s. And some days it went 2 days, some days it went 3 days. Some mornings I was at 85. And that took several months before it kind of leveled itself back out. During this journey, during the OFM, in that same time when I was introduced to you and keto was kind of going viral on all social media, all podcasters, I was introduced to Frank around that same time when he was having people test the high dose vials. Select athletes were getting the 30 grams.
This is the ketone esters.
Yeah, the ketone esters, the original KE4, the one that back in the day people were talking about, so-and-so paid 10 grand for. I tested those in sport in a full dose, the 30-gram bottle in 2016. And I was the first one that was, I'm not sure how this is going to work in sport. I did the bolus. I did the 60 grams of carbohydrate bolus 30 minutes prior, and then that, and it still bottomed my glucose out. Ketones went through the roof. I saw the race in slow motion. My cognitive performance was insane. The visuals, the colors, everything were just, I can't even explain it, but absolutely couldn't push on the pedals. Raced 3 races that day, and then next day we chatted. We did a little YouTube, Frank and I, and my HRV showed like I was off a 2-week recovery period. So at that time, I was Frank, I think the trick on these are going to be with recovery. And so continue playing around with them for the next year. He would give me samples here and there. Try this. People are talking about a low dose now. Just try a cap. I tried the cap for sleeping. I didn't get much benefit. I tried caps on rides. Never really feel anything on a ride, but still helped my recovery. My HRVs were staying better than ever. So I knew there was some magic to it. It was just figuring it out.
Yeah, there was no downside that you could. There was absolutely no downside, but you couldn't definitively tell that those microdoses were adding to your power.
Yeah.
The consistency we see is you're not going to push more power. Your pace isn't going to go faster as if you're running, but you can stay going at a high level longer. Plus you don't make the stupid mistakes because you get the brain fog.
That's where I went with it after that. After playing with them for a while, I started testing them on these 5-hour training rides. Most of racing in America is criterium. The stage races are gone. There's only a select few. In California and Northern California, there's a couple longer road races, and that's my weakest link. And so I was getting bored with criteriums, and I wanted to really take it to the next level and be competitive in these 80, 90, 100-mile races. So let me try these esters, going through the full OFM protocol, and then dose with what he came up with, the new one, the KE1, at like 4.5 hours in. So I've done Vespas, I've done a gel, and then I do an ester for the last 20K. And when you're at that point, you're kind of burnt. You've been on the bike for hours. You got the fatigue setting in. You got the cloudy brain coming. If you're older, your back's hurting, everything. And those things really clear you up and really.
How old are you chronologically?
45.
45. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And you're racing a lot of criterium too, right?
Every weekend right now.
Right now. So one of the things I'd like to have you talk about, because you're the one actually doing it, is how does OFM, the whole OFM paradigm, the Vespa, the strategic carbs, the ketones, how does that work for you as somebody that's doing crits? Because the typical thing is, oh yeah, anything fat adaptation, you lose your top end, blah blah blah.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to go back real quick because we're jumping forward.
As long as you want to be, man.
Let's go back a little. So Frank and you was 2016, 2017.
I think you probably were working with me a couple of years ahead of working with Frank.
Yeah, so 2015 with you, because that was when the diabetes came. Frank was closer to the 17.
Yep.
And I, now that my health was back, I was all in again in the category 1 pro criterium thing.
Right.
End of 2017, I was getting burnt. I've had some sleeping issues. I've shared with you that I don't sleep well. I do now. That's another story. But I wasn't sleeping, and I've been giving this thing now a good 5-year run in the pro crit thing. And I was burnt in 2017, and the last race in Dana Point, I think I'm done. I think it's time to retire. I think it's time to really get this sleeping thing under control now too. And I remember that last race, I kind of felt a little anxiety after, but that could be adrenaline and the little caffeine I had before the race. Like when I would sit down, I was like kind of short of breath, but if I stood up, it was fine. Never really thought more of it. The following week, I went to my functional medicine doc and said, "Hey, let's get this under control. I'm done racing. Let's get on the sleep." He referred me to the cannabis doctor. It wasn't legal yet. He's like, "What do you think about this for sleep?" I'm like, "I'll give it a go." I did that stuff in high school. That doctor, who I thought was a quack, found that I had a enlarged. He heard the regurgitation in my heart, and
Yep.
And I told him, I was like, "Really, dude, you can hear this?" And he said, "Listen." And he put the scope. I just came from the doctors, my regular doctor, which I did hyperbaric. They took all my vitals. They missed it because I had such a strong ejection fraction rate with a low heart rate. Athlete, I was in the 30s. That he never listened up high in the arch, and so he missed it. And this other doctor found this regurgitation. Went straight back there, ran an EKG. Said, "Yep." Months of checking it, different echoes. Yeah, your aortic is enlarged to 5.1. This is emergency surgery. I was asymptomatic. At that point, they don't know if it's congenital. I instantly just started blaming sport again. Just the diabetes thing. I'm like, damn it.
I remember all that. That's the stuff we want to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, I started getting so upset, and I was just blaming the sport. I knew I was burning the match at both ends again, not sleeping. I got the nutrition thing down and controlled my blood sugar, but so I went to 5 or 6 cardiologists just to find somebody that I can trust and that I like. And at that point, nobody could tell me if it was congenital, and so I just assumed it was sport. And I was like, "Oh, with what I know and the team around me, I'm going to reverse this." I took a year off completely, all forms of exercise, did everything I can do to bring my blood pressure as low as I can to let that valve kind of shrink back down. And so it went to strict keto again, the 1 meal a day for a year straight. And it shrunk back down to a 4.7. And my cardiologist cleared me to go ride again. He said, "You can ride." I'm like, "I'm not sure you know how we ride. We're not riding beach cruisers. It's not your typical endurance." Then "You're fine. Just ride a bike however you want. Just don't lift heavy weights." Instantly, this is who I am. I'm a bike racer. That's all I know. And got right back into the local group ride, started smashing it, feeling good again. Had a year rest. Legs were great. And it got finally to the point where the first time in my life I can actually feel it. I could no longer walk up my stairs. I couldn't get up a hill. And it dilated back to a 5.2, and we went in for emergency surgery, and it found out that it was bicuspid valve, congenital, enlarged heart, athlete's heart.
Yeah, the end. Large heart's a given, right?
Yeah, aortic valve had an aneurysm. So we repaired that. I got the new Edwards valve, replaced it. Had Anna bring everything to me in the hospital, nutritional wise. I'm not falling for that heart health diet in the hospital. The low salt, high sugar stuff. So I had my bone broth. I had everything I needed in there. And thankfully, I was an athlete and had my health outside of these problems. The first day in CCU, you can walk to the end of the hallway. I was so uncomfortable and out of my mind. Sitting didn't help. So how many times can I walk? As much as you feel comfortable. I probably did 20 miles the first day, just back and forth, back and forth. 7 days in the hospital, I was doing laps. The surgeon saw that I was an athlete and I had steel plates everywhere, so he plated my chest. Day 8, I was able to drive myself home, where most people can't drive for 12 weeks. I was cleared to ride a bike at 28 days after open heart surgery. And I can only say it is from what you guys have taught me. The nutrient-dense foods I was getting, the gut-friendly, all this stuff just allowed me to heal at such a rapid rate. I had a goal of doing my first century ride after heart surgery at 1 year. And at 6 months in, I did 6 consecutive Grand Fondos with over 14,000 feet of climbing.
6 months post-op.
Post-op. I did them with Anna, so I thank Anna for holding me within my zones.
Right.
Go chase the guys. I just wanted to complete them with her, and stayed borderline zone 1, zone 2 on all of them. And you've talked about that too, that 80-10.
80-20, yeah.
80-20, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, 80-20, you got 80% in the zone 1, zone 2, and then 20% upper, but only 5 to 8% is really balls to the walls, right? You got thresholds, thresholds, and then it's very little of it's going to be, and I do that in the theory behind that is to mimic our evolutionary heritage as hunter-gatherers.
Yeah. So that happened by default, just being cautious of the new heart valve and all that, and making sure I heal proper. So I spent 2 years doing that.
Yep, I remember all that. And you said that and do you I think that you probably had a congenital predisposition, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but to have that come out, you have to have other things in play to have it express itself. The racing, high-level bike racing is one thing, but high-level bike racing on a carbohydrate-based physiology is probably what really threw it out over the top because of the inflammation.
Yeah, that's, like I said, that's how I found the heart or the blood sugar problem in the first place. The inflammation was so high that my wrist, I couldn't hold the handlebars. My neck, I couldn't hold my neck up anymore. It was so out of control back in 2015. And now I don't deal with any of that inflammation, and it's not even measurable anymore.
Yeah, this is 10 years, a decade later.
Yeah. So by default, I spent 2 years perfecting the OFM and ketone esters and the 80-20 thing, which led into kind of the COVID era. So I had even extra free time to ride a bike, less work, and the volume went through the roof. I got to where I was doing like pro volume, 400-mile weeks. And like I said, my weakest link is endurance, and power is not an issue for me. By doing this method, my endurance dramatically changed. In 2021, I went and did my first race at Southern California road race state championships in 35 plus. And I took the victory there in the 90-mile road race. 2 years out of heart surgery, perfecting my fueling strategy, my health, and the following year in 2022, I wanted to now prove that I can do it in criterium. And so I went and got the championships in 2022 in a criterium.
And that's in Pennsylvania or California?
Yeah, I was in California.
You're still in California then?
Yeah, I moved at the end of 22, 23, I moved here.
All right. I can't remember the timeline, but yeah.
That was the first race that I really had it dialed in. So
you were using the Vespa, the strategic carbs,
yeah,
and the ketone esters for your fueling.
Long, slow warm up. Just you've always said, getting those systems open and firing, but also, like I said, the older you get, I think the longer the warm up I need.
Yep.
These criterium races are anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes. They're not long. I don't need a lot of fuel if they're early in the morning. So I would get there a couple hours early, just soft pedal zone 1, open up to zone 2 a little bit for about an hour and a half. I'll start with a Vespa, then I'll do a second Vespa, and then right 30 minutes prior, it's all fasted up to that point. Prior to the criterium, I'll do 1 gel, and then right after that, 15 minutes before the race start, I would do the KE1. And so I'd have all systems loaded and fueled and ready to go.
Loaded, yeah.
Yeah, and reading the race was just so easy. I mean, there was not a move getting away from me. I was seeing everything, catching everything, and my threshold was up. Normally I would just a pure sprinter. I would just sit in the back and just hope that it stayed together for a bunch sprint. But at this race, at the state championships, there was a breakaway after breakaway after breakaway, and I was covering them all. 3 laps to go. There were 3 people up the road with a 30-second gap. I made the bridge across, still had enough to catch them and sprint right by them for the win. And I couldn't do that years prior. Years prior, I could sprint, 1,500, 1,600 watts, but I couldn't hold 300 in my life depended on it. And now it's I can sustain 4 something for hours. And
right. And then if you need the 1,200 watts for a sprint or a break or an attack, you got them.
It's there, yeah. And I couldn't do that when I was doing the pure keto thing. When I was more focused on just fixing my blood sugar, and then I tried to race with that way before I met you. I tried to race with it, and it was a struggle. I tried to do this.
And that's the unfortunate thing because, we met a couple of years into this whole keto thing, which I had probably a little bit to do with because people were talking about people performing, but it always got put back to the keto narrative and the ketogenic diet. And I'm like, no, there's more to it. There's the Vespa, there's the strategic carbs, there's getting your vitamin D levels up properly. There's stress management because cortisol makes you burn sugar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no, it was a keto diet. It was a keto diet. We're in this weird place. And, you're somebody who's been real successful and you're having a successful last couple of seasons since you moved to Pennsylvania, correct?
Correct. It's funny that you said that. It's how it went full circle because I told you I found out about the ketogenic diet from Ben Greenfield's podcast, which was talking about the faster studies.
And he learned about it from me.
Yeah. So then it went mainstream and it was all over the news and everywhere. And I went strict keto and really didn't know anything about you. And then it came back to you.
Right. Through my brother of all people. Yeah. Yeah. And it's Ben found out it from me because when he was kind of looking at metabolic, Bob Seebahar's metabolic flexibility, which I call low carb light, and he's got the right idea. It's just that it was a little bit outside the science because Bob's got an MS and when you're in that academic thing with a postgraduate degree, you can't you kind of got the guardrails on what you can say and do. It's got to be published, right? And so somebody said to me, hey, who was following Ben, you gotta. So I reached out to him and I put him in touch. He was kind of like skeptical, and I put him in touch with Steve Finney. And so, Steve's got a pretty wealth of research, and he talked a bit. He corresponded with Ben, and then it went through a series of people over the course of late summer, fall, this time of year, and then Steve put him in touch with Peter Attia at the time, because Peter Attia Steve and Jeff had kind of sorted out Peter's problems with keto. He was like totally tanking on the keto, and they got him. And then so Ben talked to him, and that's when it all became really big. And then when the Faster study got going, they were looking for recruits. And I said, well, you guys really need to get Ben Greenfield because he'll get it out for you. But the problem with the Faster study was all but 2 of the low carb diet cohorts were people I'd coach, including Ben. Right. And they all used Vespa, and they were doing strategic carbs in real life. And you could see that in the data, because out of the 12 low carb diet cohort, 10 of them were all clumped together. And then there are these 2 who are performing less, which goes, as you know, if you do pure keto, and that brings me to this whole thing. You're a guy who's done it all, done and seen it all: high carb, keto, OFM, esters, and bike racing is one of those things that has extreme levels of demand. It requires endurance, it requires high level, it requires sub-threshold, threshold, super threshold. The strategies, it's I don't understand it. I just know it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I can see why it's one of the biggest sports. It's sort of like, I wouldn't say it's golf, because it's totally different, but how golf is never, it's never something you can get the formula down. It's the same thing with bike racing.
I run 3 or 4 different plans, one plan, a backup plan, and another plan, and never use any of them. Right. So bicycle racing has this huge spectrum of dynamic requirements, right? Yeah. And so what we've got, and I you talk about this, is we've got this interesting situation right now where you have, and you're right, you're the perfect guy to talk about, because you got the high carb camp who's pushing even, carb levels for fueling for bike racing that are just literally the sky's the limit, right? People are pushing over 140 grams an hour now, and they're talking about this in all kinds of endurance sports, these 90 to 140 grams plus fueling rates, and nobody wants to talk about what it's doing to their bodies in terms of the downside factors at that level. And then you got the keto camp that wants to talk about all the benefits that the sugar camp doesn't want to talk about, but they don't want to talk about the fact that you go keto, you're putting you're putting down the governor in low gear, and that's all where you're going to sit. I feel like the fat metabolism thing was gaining traction so fast, and they doubled down. They doubled down with these carbs. Because there was a movement where I shared with you, even my friend who's Carmichael training system, vegetarian, high carb, he started wearing the glucose monitor and started doing fasting and trying to incorporate more fats. And that lasted for a year or so. And then it was like, got swept under the rug with this high carb thing.
Yeah.
Which I'm still questioning. I mean, I've been in the game for so long, and nutrition side of it with BMX racing and pure anaerobic 30-second sprints. And back in 2000s, we were pushing high carbs. And really, has it changed that much that you're seeing records being broken all of a sudden, records that have stood for 40 years? I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's all this new. Everyone I ride with, it's all about their new nutrition program. It hasn't changed that much. They're telling you they're pushing a higher dosage, but people have been pushing pretty high dosage for a long time.
Yeah, they have, but the formulas for getting them in have improved. I mean, I've seen, these hydrogels, they're putting a lot more sodium in with the carb mixes. People aren't afraid of sodium as they were back in 2000.
Yeah.
That's a huge factor, right? The osmotic potential, getting the osmotic potential right. So I think that there have been significant refinements, but it's not obvious, right?
Yeah.
And now what else is going on? I don't know. I don't think it's EPO anymore, but
there's something going on. I'll tell you that much. I don't
yeah.
know. I have no idea, but these numbers that these people are pulling through, they're not getting that by doubling their carb intake.
Well, and they're certainly not telling anybody. But that aside, for the regular man, for the regular guy like you as a top age grouper or anybody else who's riding and wants to be both perform well and have that clip, that ability to break. This is kind of one of the things I want to discuss with you as a guy who does both competitive road racing. Where'd you finish last year in the nationals?
I didn't go to nationals, but last year in state championships here, I got a second this year and Pennsylvania.
Yep.
In 23 and 24, I missed it by an inch, a bike throw.
Oh. Yeah, so you're riding at a high level, and yeah. So you don't, just kind of give us a rundown, because you have other reasons to be staying fit. So health is a priority. It's like for you, it's life or death.
Yeah.
And you're still able to race competitively.
Yeah. So we just went on a rant on how high these people are feeling with these carbs and what it could potentially do. And I think the market that we both are in is these people that find this sport, either ultra running or cycling later in life, they need a hobby, they need to get better health. And we want to show them the way to do it the right way and not get in the same situation that I was in. And that's what I'm trying to do today is, look, here I was in 2015, here I was in 2019 with heart failure. Here I am today with some of the best health I can have. And
best performance.
Yeah, and the best performance I've had in my life. My numbers are better than they've ever been. And recovery, I told you I didn't sleep. I sleep. It's amazing how good I sleep now. And could it be part of my health just getting better and better and better? I think that was a greater part of it. And then I think moving out to the middle of nowhere and getting away from all the 5G and wireless and all that helped a lot.
Absolutely. Non-native EMF. There's all these incremental things that we identify in the OFM program, and it's non-native EMF. It's managing your chronic stressors of the modern world. It's, grounding. Earthing. What they call zeta potential, because your body runs on biochemical reactions and we're meant to be grounded. And I don't want to sound too woo, but you don't have to do a lot of grounding to get the effect and maintain your zeta potential. But those things definitely do count. And the more you're ensconced in that modern urban world, the more it becomes necessary. Whereas if you're living out in the country and you're getting up and doing chores and getting that morning sunlight to set your circadian rhythm, get you that UV light, which is really important for the dawn effect, right? To mitigate that dawn effect. That's part of the reason you have it.
Yeah.
That sunlight really helps to control that. Because I listen to Jack Cruz a lot, and Jack is like way out there. He's on the, the whole photon. And so because of my background in biology and physics, it all makes sense to me, but it's how do you translate that into everyday habits and practices that promote your health, right?
Yeah, we all can't move down to the equator.
Right. And we don't need, I don't think that we really need to if we're mindful. I'm living up here in Northern California, and anytime there's a decent morning where I can put my computer outside, and even though it's hard to see the screen because it is in full sunlight, I'll sit there and work for an hour or two in my shorts in bare feet because my body craves it. It's really weird because now I notice that difference and I don't want to go in and work at my computer where I have two screens. It's much easier and all that, but there's this weird visceral feeling that this isn't natural and I should be out there in that morning sun.
Yeah. That's how I was able to move out here. I took a remote job and do marketing, and now I'm at a computer all day. And it's I worked, besides being a coach inside the gym, my other jobs were always outside.
Yep.
And Pennsylvania is beautiful. It's country. The air is clean. There's no 5G. I have my house hardwired. I have a garden, so 15 minutes every morning barefoot in the dirt while I work the garden. I walk the dog for an hour and a half right after that. Fasted. As much sun as I can get, but the woods are deep. So I don't really get a good tan here because there's a lot of tree coverage.
Yep.
But like I said, my health just continued to get better. So heart surgery, OFM, ketone esters, now got rid of the EMF, all this stuff. And just to go on the Jack Cruise thing a little, I went a 7-day vacation 2 weeks ago to Outer Banks. So I actually got to go down a little further south where the sun was stronger. Got a really nice tan. I was 7 days in the sun. Came up here to one of the biggest races of Pennsylvania. It's three stages on the streets, bands, live music, 20,000 fans. And didn't know how I was going to do after 7 days of not pedaling at all. Rode away from the guys. I got in a 2-man break. Felt like I was riding at 50% effort, where normally we're all, and I was like, was it the rest or was it the sun?
And you know what? It was probably a combination of both, but I can guarantee you that was one of the things I saw early on when I made this my day job. Was it was clear to me anything below 50, suboptimal. You need 50 and above. You need to get lots of sun. And I would prefer you get it the way you did. The ocean, the sunlight, all that vitamin D, because the sun on your skin makes, I think when Michael Hollick says they suspect there's at least 10 to 15 other compounds that are synergistic with vitamin D that are made naturally by sun. But, a lot of people can't do that. So the most effective way was to dose with vitamin D3, mega dose, to get it above. But we saw that clearly. People wouldn't have the fat adaptation results, performance results, if they didn't have their vitamin D up. It just would not happen.
So the 7 days rest is also, everything I do nowadays is periodization.
Right.
The rest is resets. Carbs come way back low again. It goes into some intermittent fasting again, a little longer, not doing much down there on the beach. I was just sitting on the sand with my feet in the sand, hanging out with the nieces and nephews, fishing a little bit.
Swimming a little bit.
Swimming, yeah, and then just really doing a hard reset, like I talked about before. And then I come home and I get back. Like I said, I'm racing criterions almost every weekend now since season out here in the East Coast starts late. So we start into May, where California finishes in May and June. I have a couple more weekends to go before we even slow down. But so then my strategy is, we've talked a lot in the past. I'm not scared of those carbs anymore. I'll still stick to my whole food, kind of Weston A. Price, sweet potatoes. I mean, I'm lived by the Amish, so I have access to raw butter, raw milk. I make my own homemade sour cream, homemade yogurt. So
homemade natto.
I do it all, and then my sourdough bread. So my carbs are pretty high compared to what they were, but it's all at the right time, right place, and from scratch and whole.
Well, and the thing is, if you're doing your carbs in the form of raw milk and yogurt, especially raw milk, like raw milk after a hard ride, that's a carb refeed on steroids, because you not only get the insulin response which is anabolic. When you got your insulin under control and your insulin sensitivity, insulin's very anabolic, but you also get the IGF, insulin growth factor, because that, milk is what makes little animals grow big fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those two things are critical for anabolic responses after, a hard or long ride. And so raw milk is, man, that's some of the best things you can get after a hard ride, and yogurt too. And then you're also enhancing your biome because raw milk and yogurt have stuff in them. A lot of it dies off through the digestive process, but some of it's going to remain no matter what you do. And, the more and more I look at this stomach and gut health thing, getting your stomach and gut lying optimal and then really having this robust biome is just so critical to not just health, but performance. And, in your case, probably what a lot happened leading up to changing over to OFM was, just your stomach and gut tract was probably not optimal.
It was horrible. It was so bad, so gassy, bloated all the time. Even when I worked at Gold's Gym for maybe 5-6 years. All the brothers owned 11 of them in LA. Worked at all of them at a high level. And they'd always laugh, like thinking I had bad posture. But my stomach was just always so bloated and gassy. And I never get gassy anymore. It is through the microbial stuff I add. I mean, homemade sauerkraut, natto, yogurts, everything. I can go off the deep end for a weekend. I can go eat the worst food and it doesn't faze me at all.
It's amazing what having your stomach and gut health optimized does to mitigate inflammation, because that, if your stomach and gut lining and the biome that resides in there can get to it before your immune system has to deal with it, it's huge for controlling inflammation and maintaining carb tolerance. And that's why you can tolerate the carbs you can when you need them. I mean, it's not like, this is the thing about OFM. Everybody thinks, it's a keto diet or it's keto or you can't perform on it because they think, they've got themselves thinking this way and they have no clue. They're talking about something that's so outside of that paradigm of high carb or keto that neither camp understands what it's doing. And unfortunately, they think about diet and fueling, not about that bigger picture of getting your metabolism and physiology where it needs to be and using diet, hydration, EMF mitigation, vitamin D, all these things as tools.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we talked last week and you reminded me about the milk. I drink it because I have it here occasionally around the house.
Yep.
But I raced yesterday, a brand new course in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. Is by Philly. Big giant hill. My cardiologist team sponsored it. We didn't think it was going to happen because that hurricane was supposed to bring in thunderstorms, but it held off. And I showed up. I was like, man, this is not a course for me. It was just 55-second max effort hill repeats. A minute and a half lap, 55 seconds uphill, just boom, 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 over and over and over. And the storm pushed in that 100% humidity, 90 degrees. And it was a struggle. It was a really, really hard race. And Anna mixed me up the milk with a kind of Paul Saladino thing, our friend's honey right here, local honey, a squirt of honey.
Right. She had that sugar.
A big old pinch of sea salt.
Yep.
I pounded that after. And I told you the following week I raced that Ardmore one, which is a big race. I didn't go to that one prepared, celebrating after because I won. I drank a beer. After coming off 7 days of rest, all I did was a 45-minute race that day. And the following week, I couldn't even pedal. I was completely thrashed. Yesterday, I drank the milk. Normally I lose 4 or 5 pounds of sweat rate. I came home, I was actually a pound heavier instead of losing all this in this humidity. And today, I feel like I didn't even race yesterday.
Man.
Like the recovery from that milk and the electrolytes and the sugar and that insulin response. Right after, I went straight to the car and just pounded it.
Right, but you had the Vespa, probably some ketones, all that before, so you didn't do the damage.
Yeah.
You need to recover from, and then you got that anabolic effect from the milk and the honey and the little bit of insulin, and bam.
A lot of times we've talked in the past that continuing the fast for a couple hours before the refeed for that anabolic effect. I've done that for years. But recently, just because my intensity is,
you're racing crits right now. That's a different animal. Yeah.
I have 2 training practices during the week, a Tuesday and Thursday, that are almost harder than my racing because it's all out. In races, you race strategically. It's the guy who does the least amount of work who usually wins.
Right.
Yeah. In training here, we get tactical and just attack the crap out of each other. So if I race on a Sunday, I know I got to be on my A game if I want to be even competitive with our training group.
Well, okay, so that's an interesting thing we need to talk about because that's the thing. The magic happens outside of the training and the racing. It's that's when that adaptive recovery. So you're probably, like you say, you don't feel like you rode yesterday because you hit that anabolic hit, plus you didn't do the damage because you're on the Vespa ketone thing and minimizing your carbs. And even though you were pushing threshold and probably a little few hits in the super threshold, it probably wasn't as bad as other people because you're fat adapted, right? Just like some of our data, you've seen that data where we've got a couple of guys who are living in Flagstaff who are ultra runners, and they can sustain over 2 grams a minute fat oxidation. And I'm saying sustain for like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's high level work. It's not loafing along. I think with the gradient and all that, it worked out to be sub 6 minute mile pace. And for an ultra runner, that's work. And these guys aren't young either. They're in their 40s and 50s. So you don't do that damage because you're in beta oxidation way exponentially more than your average rider doing that kind of thing. And then you hit that anabolic effect, and then now you're in that phase where the magic's happening of adaptation, where you're rebuilding your mitochondria, your cell wall, lipid bilayer. Your body's adapting to get stronger, fitter, more resilient, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, if you're doing a long road ride, even if you hammer at the end, as long as you get your hydration on point, you're probably not going to be hungry for a while. But the demands of criterium is, say, get your hydration on point after, and then see if you're hungry. Because usually if your hydration's off, you might think you're hungry, but it's really hydration.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've trained that way for so long. I'm like the only guy I know that's not going straight to food. And there's a handful in our community that race together, and they're like straight to started with the pasta, straight back to the pasta. And then the sugar mixes in their water bottles. I don't know. I don't use any mix in my water bottles, especially Criterium Race. I might use I've been using the Myoscience, Mike Condell. Is that his name? He's got a good electrolyte mix. It's a little higher on the magnesium and less on the sodium compared to the LMNT, and a little bit of creatine in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been, I don't know. I guess there's some new research showing with the creatine helping the electrolytes absorb, or vice versa under sport. But I've been drinking one of those in a ride.
It would be the electrolytes helping absorb the creatine, because that's the thing. It's the osmotic potential.
Yeah.
Because your stomach and gut, when you're racing at that level, crit level, your stomach and gut is on sleep mode. And so digestion really isn't possible, but being drawn osmotically in to the bloodstream, if you got the ratio of electrolytes to fluids right, to water right, it'll draw in through osmosis and bring some of those some of that creatine or other branched chain amino acids. But I'm more of the thing on the foods. People ask me about creatine monohydrate all the time, and I've read the literature and all that, and I'm like, you want creatine?
Eat a steak.
Go have steak and eggs.
Yeah.
You know, because you look, nobody, and I get using it a little bit of creatine or BCAAs in a race can be useful, but I think it's a lot less than people are doing, and that just creates, they're overloading the metabolism. It's still helping them, but they could get by on less. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried those amino acids. The perfect aminos, all of them, the BCAAs.
Yeah, I think that they help people in long rides, but it's they don't need as much as they're trying to dose them up with, because especially if they're an OFM athlete, because they've already got it on board through their food system. And that's why I say I've got a bias. I meat, and I will eat a lot. If you put a lot of meat in front of me, I will eat it. But that being said, and we've talked about this, when you're eating the whole animal, like a lot of collagen, a little tiny bit of organ meat, and some muscle meat, and other things like eggs, dairy, fish, seafood, poultry, that balance everything in its natural state. The amount of animal products you need to retain really healthy, lean muscle mass, that's type 1 aerobic slow twitch muscle fibers, and a lot of type 2 aerobic fast twitch muscle fibers, and very little type 2 anaerobic fast twitch muscle fibers. The amount that you need to eat of animal products is so small, it's scary. It'll scare people. And I saw that working with vegetarian athletes who were world class, and they were willing to include, they were ovo-lacto, and they were willing to include, well-sourced liver capsules and gelatin capsules into their diet. And every time we got them on that, performance went through the roof, injuries disappeared. And so that really got me thinking, and then also thinking about, our evolutionary heritage as hunter-gatherers. I mean, we didn't go, most humans, there were isolated cases of famine, but most humans went through periods of feasting and fasting.
Mm-hmm.
We figured out really quickly where the fisheries were, and we followed the great ruminant herds. And I think that that's one of the reasons, because of our upright bipedal posture and the fact that we had sweat glands, we could follow these ruminant herds, and then that retained us with a stable food source. The only problem was there was no refrigeration, and that stable food source took a lot of physical effort to get, right?
Yeah.
And some risk, but it everything was in perfect balance. And then, 3 or 4 times a year, you'd find berries or tubers or fruit or whatever. And, equatorial Africa, more fruit, less animal products, just because it was available in the tropical areas. But, and then maybe up where the Eskimos and Inuits were, they had a lot less, carbohydrates and more, animal foods. But the point was, the whole physiology of carbs, the reason they become addicted in the modern world is simply because it's absolutely perfectly developed for the world that we evolved in, where fruit was ripe only periodically, and we had to get as much as we could in those few days it was ripe. And so that the whole carb addiction thing, but we never got so far down that path of, like I said, we had concentrated carbs 3 to 5 times a year, not 3 to 5 times a day for decades.
Yeah.
And so, people didn't get insulin resistant and all the other maladies that go with eating high carbs. Whereas, even some of these cultures in Southeast Asia, the tropical cultures that have a lot of carbs in their diet, well, they get a lot of sun. They get a fair amount of carbs, but it's not all carbs. And it's usually in more natural. There's a lot of natural things, fruits, vegetables, including, and also some tubers or rice. And then there is protein, but they're out in the sun a lot. And, they tend to retain their health a good bit. I mean, you do see people get more obese as they get in their 40s and 50s, and nobody wants to talk about that. But it's just not it doesn't happen as quickly as it does in America, right?
Right. I think that's why we kind of got along and understood each other so much right from the get-go. I've always been so intrigued in this ancestral way,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not scared to talk about it. You actually, where some people in your position are cautious what they say and what they will recommend, what they'll recommend, and you love to challenge it. And that's how I've been my whole life. I've always thought outside the box. When I got into the gym, one of my studies, best bud now, he's doing great. In the functional medicine school I used them. He's big loose, 600 pounds. They're like just hitting him to the ground, training him 3 times a day in the gym, just taking him for his money. This is not right. Come on, people. You're looking at you. This is the 2000s. You guys are doing this wrong. This guy's under so much stress. We need to not have him exercise for a while and work on his gut health. And back then I started looking into this ancestral way. There was periods that we didn't have water. There was periods that we didn't eat. There was like all this, and then the seasonal stuff. I've always questioned that. It's too easy now in America. We have access to everything at any time.
Well, people don't even have to get in their car to go to the drive-thru. They can just dial it up on their phone. And it comes to their door.
Crazy. It's crazy.
Right. And
I helped lose so much, and then COVID scared the crap out of him, and he locked himself down for 2 years, didn't leave his apartment, and door dashed everything, and got back up over 500 pounds again. But he actually got into triathlons a couple years ago. He hired a running coach, and he's older. So he said he never really respected me or other people because all his coaches were always younger. And he found an 85-year-old man who, because he was older, he actually respected this guy's knowledge more and really just connected with him. Lou, you got to, even though you're big, you got to look at yourself as an athlete. Athletes don't drink alcohol and they don't eat the way you eat. And it clicked. And then everything I always taught him, the OFM stuff, everything, just he's out there running, swimming every day, eating clean. He's down to like 290. But I think we were talking about the microbial health a little bit. I had a lot of studies on that too. Back in 2015, the same school, the Cal Blues in Thousand Oaks. I did some gut studies, and when my blood sugar was through the roof, my microbiota was so out of whack.
It was jacked.
It looked like it was either, I think they said, the morbidly obese, or there was some people in the Ice Age that had this kind of balance where my vermiculites were dominant, the 90%. Everything else was really non-measurable.
Do you have candida, or you were lucky enough?
I had candida my whole life. I took the damn medicine.
Candida, candida exists in pretty much everybody. It's just whether it's kept in control or goes out of control. So you had to go on fluconazole?
Yeah, I got it back in when I was snowboarding. I did the pro snowboarding thing, the border cross thing in high school, and moved to the mountains. In 97, 98, it started showing its face, the spots everywhere. Oh. And my doctor, just take this for 2 weeks and then go tan. Well, he stays away for 3-4 months and then comes back. And I thought
that's the thing. And I've successfully worked with people. Sometimes we got to use, because it's so common in endurance athletes are pushing a lot of carbs, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to do the nuclear option, which is fluconazole, and sometimes you can get it under control without it. But you have to do everything. It's not a simple single strategy move. It's a multiple strategies, and you're hitting, because candida is a fungus, and funguses are eutrophic cells, right? So they I can't remember on the phylogenetic thing, but they're unlike bacteria, their cells are very much human cells. So when you treat them with a pharmacological solution, fluconazole, another one's Nizoral, there's a whole bunch of things out there that are antifungal. You have to be very careful with them because you want to knock back the fungus to where your body can control it but in the process, you're going to knock back your own cells. And that's why, like, it's a 3 or 4 month comeback in performance when you do that, right? You probably notice that your performance tanked because you really just, you had your medicine impacted your mitochondria, not just not just the candida. Fortunately, the candida is much more susceptible to pharmacological things, and that's why they quote unquote work, but it's not free. And then once you do the treatment, you really got to work to build your cells back up.
It was the first thing to send me down this journey of chasing better health, because it's how many years do I have to keep taking this? No doctor, no one in the gym, no. At that time, I was doing BMX. No coach. Nobody would ever tell you that it was carbohydrates. Early 2000.
Right now, they still don't do it.
Yeah, early 2000. Podcasts went around, but there was some talk radio on XM and stuff with athletes, and the vegan thing was trending. So I gave the vegan thing a run, and when I do anything, I do it all in, and I go down the rabbit hole, and I go off the deep end. And so how can I do this the best way possible? And I went full raw vegan. Same mindset that you see me do now, making all my own stuff, sprouts, everything, sprouted nuts, soaking, everything. And there was some people in that group that said they can control candida that way. And I had a host of other issues that got better short term, and then things got way worse. Candida got worse. Everything got worse. And
yeah. The problem is you clean up your diet. Most people who do vegan tend to clean up their diet for a while.
Yeah.
And then because it's really hard to get vegan right. It's to get that nutrient balance right for the nutrition that humans need, because our digestive tracts are closer to a dog's than a pig's. Pigs and bears are what I would consider true omnivores. We're omnivorous carnivores. So we can exist on a vegan or vegetarian diet, but it's really hard to get it optimal. Whereas, the whole animal eating really optimizes it and makes it super efficient, because I said you really don't have to eat a lot, and that makes it quite sustainable. I mean, your average American who's 30 to 40 pounds overweight and chugging down hamburger and steaks and fried chicken, and they're getting way too much. That's not sustainable. Or even the carnivore movement, all these people are chugging down a kilo of meat a day, and that's crazy. I couldn't, as much as I mean, I couldn't do a pound or 2 pounds a day.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Every day. I mean, once a week, put a big steak in front of me. Heck yeah. But you look at it. I mean, what do lions do? They kill something, they feast on it, and then they don't eat for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And that's how our stomach and guts are. But getting the nutrient balance. I was talking with Frank, who's a vegan, and he's probably one of the guys that's really doing it right, because the guy's super intelligent, super even keel, but he's taking L-carnitine, he's getting his essential omega-3s, he's doing all the things you need to do to make up for the lacking. And even, do you know Jack Norris? He's a vegan nutritionist up in Northern California. He's one of the smartest guys about this. I mean, even he flat out says, if you're going to do a vegan diet, you got to supplement with these things, because you're not going to get it out of your food.
Yeah. Yeah. So my gut health, at the same time, when I found the blood sugar problem, I had journey, I said, from the vegan to the paleo for athletes. Was that Rob Wolf's first book, I think? I don't know who wrote it, but I went down that journey, and I was still fighting the candida, and worked with a buddy at the school and did a study. He's part of the slow food movement in Ventura County. And so he wanted to do a gut health study. And it was the same time I was going to the keto way. And so me and Anna were the two keto clean eaters. And then there was a standard American and vegan in the study. And through local ferments from wild source too. It's crazy what it did to my gut. But at that time, so my gut got better. We tracked it. through these studies, and now I have such a diverse microbial life in my gut after that little study, and still fighting candida a little bit. But like I said, I went before OFM. I was strict keto, less than 30 grams of carbs a day. Candida disappeared completely. I never have any sign. I used to have the athlete's feet, the jock itch, the dandruff in the hair, the spots all over, gone. And you said now where we are today with the criterium racing every weekend, my carbs are get mid-season, they start getting up a little higher, and it hasn't showed its face back in 10 years.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. The way you're eating with your natural concentrated carb sources, fermented sourdough, raw milk, all that, that's going to do a huge amount to mitigate that candida overgrowth. But maybe having beer and wine and some crappy food after a race, that's what's going to set you back. But you're so sensitive to that, it right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I said, it doesn't affect my gut anymore. But when we look at it at the highest level of top athlete, 100%. I wake up knowing the difference. Yeah. When you have it all dialed in, OFM, Vespa, esters, hydration, it's the recovery is unreal. And I track this all. Like I said, I don't track it much anymore after heart surgery. I kind of said I got to live life a little more. And I think you're right there too. Like, these people obsessed on monitoring everything.
Yeah.
Now they get the blood temperature. They got everything. And my doc gave me the continuous glucose monitor, and I haven't even used it. I did it the old school way for so many years when I met you. Prick, and I have journals and journals of this. And I worked with the HRV for training when he first started and as an athlete. So I've logged HRV every single day, and I know what works, and I know what.
Well, and that's what we try to bring back, because like I say, when your body's working properly, your own feedback mechanism, your physiological feedback mechanisms are your best thing. And then all these devices and technology corroborate that to build confidence in yourself, build performance to where you don't have to do this. And we see this. I've got several people, including a couple of type 1 diabetics who are on glucose monitors, and they see this. They get on OFM and they're using Vespa. When they use Vespa for exercise, boom, stable blood sugar. And that's not supposed to be possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For a type 1 diabetic, they're supposed to eat, they got to eat and do all these things to maintain blood sugar. And Vespa, not a problem. They stay stable.
I do have one new device that I love, and it helps me, is the Fourth Frontier heart rate. Have you seen those?
No.
It's called Fourth Frontier. It's from India. It's got a full lifetime ECG that I can send live to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And then so if I want to sleep in it, wear it, whatever, it's doing full-time HRV, full-time ECG. It has a stress factor for runners. It has your breath rate and everything. So me and you talked last week a little bit about some of us having some anomalies with AFib that would show its face occasionally.
Especially resting heart rate AFib.
Yeah, so I said mine showed where I'm in my life, 5 years out for heart surgery and not have it is a miracle. And it's probably because of this whole program where every single person that's had the surgery I had has AFib after and eventually gets the surgery for it and has to take a host of pharmaceuticals. I don't take a single pharmaceutical. It's only showed its face 2 times. And yeah, it's the resting one. It's a low heart rate. But this new strap I have, I don't wear it 24 hours a day. I only wear it in exercise. When I see the rhythm, because it'll give me a pie graph of normal and abnormal rhythm. And like I said, if I have that bad food or that beer or something,
you see it right away.
I can see it. And it's not a lot, but it's showing, let's say, mine's never going to be normal because of the surgery. So like on average, I might be like 80% normal rhythm. If I kind of go off and have a beer after or out to eat after, and it's loaded with a bunch of garbage, and I'll see 70% the next day. Yeah, it's plus the HRV. So now I have the HRV and this heart rate rhythm that I can look at, and it's just
that's only giving you the confidence to know from your intuitive knowledge. Like you say, if you go out and eat beer and pizza, and the next day you're like, I feel crap. You know why, and you know how it's affecting you, right? Yeah. And the data just corroborates that. And I think HRV and something that can take real time EKGs that's an interesting tool. Mm-hmm. You know, I wouldn't mind having one to play with myself, because I told you, like I get AFib at real low heart rates. And one of my friends, Bruce LaBelle, he's also he was an ultra running legend back in the beginning of the trail ultra stuff. So he's got it too. And he says, yeah, whenever they do a test on me, I've got a resting AFib, but he says, as soon as they get me on a treadmill at 70 beats, it goes away. Right. It's stable. And then, they do the stand. He's 66 now. Mm-hmm. And so he can't, so his AFib goes away, and then, they put him on a standard stress test, and, he doesn't tap out because he's so fit. Right. Not to mention his cholesterol's elevated.
Yeah. I'm supposed to do, I think, the VO2 stress test. Yep. I see my new cardiologist this Friday. He's a good guy. Like I said, he works with all these pro teams out here, the Phillies, and he gets sport. I haven't gone down the nutrition side yet with him, because I've only met him that one time, but he'll sit there with me an hour, 2 hours in a session. So we'll get there. But he recommended someone at Penn State to run a regular stress test. Is not going to do anything for me.
Right.
Yeah, that's not going to do anything. So he's going to hook up a VO2 stress test at one of the colleges here.
Yeah, when you get that data, would you send me the raw data?
Yeah.
If you can, because that'll be good. That'll be good. Yeah. So anything else you to talk about? I mean, I'm glad we had you on. I mean, you're a real life example. This is, like I say, a great collaboration, because maybe I got this started, but it's this great collaboration and feedback we get from people like you that, keep it going and keep it building, because, it's been a struggle to get it out there. People don't get it.
Yeah.
But that's the way innovation is. When it's real innovation, people think you're just crazy, and they kind of shun it until it gets to that early majority stage. You're an early adopter.
It's exciting seeing you and Frank come together, because I've worked both of you guys for a long time and tried to promote you both as best as I can. I'm not really on social media. I promote it on Strava. I promote it on my group rides. I have your Vespa Assos kit. And I give samples out of both. And people, they have no feedback, and they never want to try it. Well, I didn't really feel anything. I'm like,
that's the point.
Do you feel something when you eat that gel? You're taking a $3-4 gel. Do you actually feel something? No. It's just another source of energy, and it has health aspects and other properties to it that are working behind the scenes. And it's so hard to get across. People think because it's not a gel and it's something new and trivial, they're supposed to turn into Superman.
Yeah. Well, part of it's also the marketing hype. I mean, I reached out to Frank, and we started talking, and then I got this idea for doing this summit. But Frank's he's a no BS guy. He's telling it from what he knows about ketones, and his knowledge is vast, because he knew Dr. Cahill really, or Dr.
Veach.
Yeah, Veach, Dr. Veach really well, who worked with Dr. Cahill. I mean, he's resting on the shoulders of giants in the ketogenic sphere.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, is because he's probably doing better than I am because of all the keto hype, but he's also not doing as well as he should be because of all the keto hype. Because like there's all these other companies that are marketing ketones in the most disingenuous ways. They're saying, people have marketed MCT oils for the ketones. They're marketing butanediol, which is an alcohol. I mean, like I told Frank, first time I picked up a bottle of Keto IQ, I looked at the ingredients, or somebody told me, and I went online and looked at the ingredients, and it's like butanediol. That's an alcohol. That's not a ketone ester. And they're marketing it like it's a ketone ester. And it's like there's all this, the same thing with the carbs camp. You've got all this hype, and then if you're somebody like Frank or me, where you want to have a cogent, more nuanced, contextual conversation to help educate people on a bigger picture of what their performance should be, and also their health, right? Your case is life or death, but people don't need to go to there, right, to get there. But that's really, a struggle. So I'm glad we're partnering and collaborating, because, people, we've got a select group of people who are starting to see that and recognize it's just, because of the way things work in today's world, it hasn't turned viral yet, but, hopefully we'll get some viral things going,
I
because you work with both of us.
I think we were all on the right path, and we had a little setback for a couple of years. Now it's starting to gain momentum again.
Yeah, it's just hard to get. It's hard to get right now. We're finding that it's hard because there's this huge push for more carbs. I mean, everything's all about the carbs right now. And in fact, I've had a couple athletes I've worked with for years go back to that route. Of course, it backfired on them, and they're not yet back because they're still enamored. That's what everybody's doing. I better do it too. But one guy.
I tried these carb gels and some of the new ones, the gels, and I tried one of the beta, the SIS beta.
Beta-alanine.
No, it's just called Beta as their brand. It's a high dose,
right,
mix in your water bottle, but it has a real thin consistency. It drinks almost like water, but it'll have 900 calories in a bottle. And some of these hard races where I'm not going to have someone out there to feed me, nobody wants to go stand on the side of the road and wait for me for 2.5 hours and hand a bottle to me or food. I've tried a few of those, but I heard someone say this. They called it the sugar cramps. And not in the gut, but your muscles seize up. I literally will cramp up if I take these gels in. I fight cramps easy. That's if the intensity is high, super, super high for longer than I'm normally used to, which is a criterion. I can get through those. But I could say that 3.5 hour mark into a road race, I will start getting forearm cramps. I will get the hamstring. And I fought it my whole life. I know how to kind of just switch muscle groups, drop in my bars, really grind a heavy gear, switch to be glute dominant. Once I get those other muscles to relax, I'll spin, and I could fake it for the rest of the ride. But I realized these gels and these drinks actually trigger it.
Yeah.
So I heard another athlete call it the sugar cramps, and I guess some of us can't process it as fast as others.
Yeah, that's true. There's a spectrum, and also just so you know, Vespa had a big following in motocross years ago, and it prevented arm pump.
Mm.
So, if you get into those big road races, start, making your intervals of Vespa a little lower to prevent that. But that's, and we're seeing that too. But we're not saying, and I think we need to make that clear at this juncture in our conversation, is we're not saying eliminate the carbs. When you need carbs, both in your diet, your pre-race and refuels, you don't be afraid to use them, right? You're just not going to be using massive amounts the way people are led to believe. This naked carb feed of pasta and garlic bread the night before your race it could be 200-300 grams a day, 400 grams the day before, and then you could be pushing anywhere from 40 to 70 grams an hour. But it's still significant carbohydrates. It's just not these ridiculous amounts. And then the other point I'm making is what we're seeing is that's the whole thing. If you can shift your, racing's won on incremental gains, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you can shift your fat metabolism and conserve your glycogen and not have to take in more calories by say 5, 10, 15, 20% and get better performance because you're not trying to process external calories, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. That's that 80-20 thing. I mean, I trained those 5-hour, 6-hour rides at that zone 2 fasted, and my body learned. And you were just saying, yeah, we're not telling you not to eat carbs. I have a massive sweet potato loaded with, I love those Japanese sweet potatoes, loaded with butter and stuff the night before a race. And then these longer rides, I'll have 2 gels. But you've said the strategic.
Yep.
Yeah, but more is not better. A little goes a long way once you fine tune your body, and it is rocket fuel when I bring it in.
Right.
Yeah, when I'm at that 3.5 hour mark and I bring that in, you can see people are already starting to bail out, and it's I feel like just getting started.
That's right. And then you kick in a little bit of ketone esters, and then you're like locked and loaded.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just keep the Vespa on those intervals and all that. Yeah, I've got a guy who's in his 40s and he's got a professional job, family, busy life. And he does marathons anywhere from 253 to 315 any day of the week. I mean, he's gone from being a fat kid, finding keto, to finding Vespa, to finding OFM and Vespa. And he says he does the Martin gels. He does 2 Vespas, one before and one in the middle of a marathon. He carries 2 Morton gels. He only takes a third to a half of them and chucks the other. He says, if I take a full Morton gel, it's the sugar sees. It just slows me down.
I tried those ones. I bought a sample pack of those.
Yep.
It's too much.
Yeah, it's too much. And what he's using is a third to a half. And that's just enough. And that's what we're seeing is if you do these hits, if you're on the Vespa and you're fully fat adapted, that 30 to 70 calorie hit, depending on context, right?
Yeah.
30 to 40 calories may be what you need in the heat, 70 calories in winter when it's cold and you can pour the coal to it. Those things.
I keep right now, I've just been doing these, the Pro Bar company, their gummies. So organic fruit juice gummies. I keep, 1 pack in my pocket, and it's there for emergency. Depending on the intensity of the ride, I know when I need it. And sometimes I'll eat the whole pack. Sometimes I won't even touch it.
Yep.
And they used to be gels. I mean, that's just what they have at the local health food store that I buy. But I mean, I used to love the Roctane gels, the goo ones. They had some amino acids in them and a little caffeine. One of those was game changing. I've tried the new ones, the SIS, the Morton gels. The SIS one is nice. The first time I tried it, it was like, holy cow, the end of a century ride. I was competing with this new up-and-coming kid from Southern California that's racing pro in Europe. I went full typical OFM for 90% of that ride. And we had one of the rest stops that had these gels. I tried one of those. I was flying. So I bought them after that, and then it's timing on that one too. So I've tried them at the wrong time when it was too much and not needed.
Yep. That's exactly right. And I'm really pretty agnostic on when it comes to your strategic carbs with OFM. I just tell people, use what you like, use what you know works, and get to the point where you use what's available. So you have that flexibility. You're not stressing out. If you don't have anything on a ride and you grab whatever gel's being sponsored at the event, it's going to work and you don't stress about it, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's all sugar.
If I have more than 2 of them, they cause some pretty severe gut pain. That maltodextrin and I don't get along.
Okay, so you're one of those guys that doesn't do well on maltodextrin.
Yeah. I mean, these a little bit affects me, but these other guys that are doing, 5 or 6 a ride, I'm constipated. My stomach hurts so bad after. I'm like, look what you just consumed. But
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. You know, it's just a little goes a long way. Well, Dustin, this has been a great time. Anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
I just want to thank you. It was, like I said, I'm blessed that your brother introduced us, and I really do give them. I don't know how to put this, but it was a huge part of my journey back to where I am today.
Well, it's also one of the main reasons why you are here today.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I don't think I would have overcome that heart surgery. First of all, it was a congenital problem that was exaggerated from
It expressed itself due to what you were doing.
Yeah, but I found you before it. So even though it was there manifesting, I was already on the right track beforehand. So which expedited my recovery process.
Well, and these things don't develop overnight. It's not like all of a sudden you flipped a switch and a gene expressed itself and your heart valve went kaput. It was, years of growing up, BMX racing, probably eating a lot of processed foods and pop as a kid and all the things that, I just always get amazed at how resilient we are. And I look at disease journals as well as read sports performance. I think about all these things. It's like, that we are really amazingly built and made, and it takes time to destroy ourselves. But boy, that I say decades of that, we can't deal with it. The occasional hit, we can deal with it. And if you time it right and do it in the right dosing, that occasional hit is actually adaptive, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool. Yeah. Well, thank you for being on, and thank you for sharing your story. And we'll just keep this collaboration on for as long as you want to. Just keep feeding us feedback, and we'll get some great stuff from you.
Sounds great. Well, I'll keep trying to spread the word here.
Yeah, well, hopefully this podcast will spread the word a little bit too.
Yeah, when you get it all edited, send me the link and I'll post it where I can post it and share it with the local groups here.
All right, super. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't